Okay, we are live, day 363 of going live. Today we're going into a little bit west of Birmingham. This is all the way in Westfield or Midfield, excuse me. 1223 Woodford Drive, Midfield, Alabama. This property is listed for $134,500, 134,900. So our goal today, right, is to figure out a price or a set of terms that would make this deal a quote unquote deal. Obviously, this is not investment advice. We're not soliciting any investments on this call. Let's just go ahead and put in some practice, put in the work, see what price or set of terms might make this a deal. This property looks relatively turnkey. I mean, everything looks pretty good to go. I mean, that looks like a legal bedroom. There's a closet there. I mean, whenever you have patterns like this, just always make sure it's up to code. Oh, it's a little risky. Okay. On a slope. So good to know. This property, newly renovated 4 bedrooms. So this property's already been renovated. Let's see. Sales and tax history. Nothing here. 47 grand. So someone's trying to flip it, I guess. I'm going to favorite this. And I like to keep close attention just because I want to see what 4 bedrooms are going for in this area, especially if I'm thinking about potentially burning some properties in this area. Okay. So now that I got this property up here, I want to look up the FMR, or the fair market rents. So I'm looking at what county this is in, Jefferson County. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to Google HUD FMR. FMR stands for fair market rents. We're going to click on the first link. When you click on the first link, you can then scroll down to access to small area FMRs on the bottom left. When you click on that, you look up FY 2025 small area FMRs. You go to Alabama, you go to Jefferson County, and now you're going to get a by bedroom count, a by zip code, and this is 35228, what your rent ceiling is. And you're going to see that the rent ceiling for a 4-bed is $1,630, and your 3-bed is $1,440. $1,440 and $1,630. 35228. Just writing down these numbers because my partners already know how I analyze deals. So this is the fastest way for me to get over the data to them if I ever think it's a deal, so that we can kind of go ahead and expedite some of the process so they're not guessing where I got these numbers from. So 134,900 for my rehab number. Actually, let's finish getting the market rents first. When you go to get your market rents, I go to affordablehousing.com. I go to the owner section. I go to the market rent estimator. I plug in the address. I plug in the bedroom count. And now I'm going to see by bedroom count that my average rent is 25 units at 1323. 1323. 1323. And using that, I'm going to be using 1323 as my more reasonable rent. And I want to show you the exact language, right? When you compare the 1323 to the 1630, that 1630 number is a ceiling, which also means that it includes utilities. So if you don't provide utilities, you have to deduct your utility allowances by bedroom count for your asset type. In this situation, it would be a single family detached home from your rent ceiling. But either way, because this is the more reasonable rent, because you're comparing the two, you have to use 1323 as your rental assumption for this property and not 1630, because then you will be overestimating the rent you can get on this property because it's not reasonable. If you want to see the exact terminology, here is the Housing Choice Voucher Program Guidebook. Housing Choice Voucher is what was previously known as Section 8, but they rebranded it from Section 8 to Housing Choice Voucher because of all the negative connotations associated with the word Section 8 for all the bad stigmas you might hear on the media. So when you go to Section 2.2, the comparability section, it says that in conducting rent reasonableness, the PHA, which stands for the Public Housing Authority, must determine whether the rent to the owner is a reasonable rent in comparison to rent for other comparable unassisted units. So this means that you can't charge more rent simply because they are a voucher holder, right? For the obvious reasons. So obviously size, unit type matters, but chances are all these 4-bedroom units here within this 3.6-mile radius are probably going to be single family homes because you don't see 4-bedroom apartments being built quite often, to be honest with you. So I'm pretty confident I can use 1323. So the next thing I want to do is I want to estimate my rehab. This property is 1450, but it looks turnkey for the most part. So I'm not going to add in any more expenses besides for replacing the 2 toilets with a high pressure flush toilet in row 132. And I'm going to remove this painting because that was from the prior deal. I got $500 for some landscaping, just kind of keep things clean before it gets rented. I got $1,500 in row 6 for just some issues with the roof, some oops, what ifs, what if I missed that, blah, blah, blah. Because sometimes you can't see everything that might be wrong with the home just from the pictures alone, right? What if the sewer line has an issue, right? After you get a sewer scope. Please, please, please make sure you do that, because that could be a couple grand to $5-7 grand, which is what I've spent before on putting in a new sewer line or digging a new sewer line. So be very careful with that. All right, so now that we got that stuff in place, what we're going to do is when you use those rental assumptions and plug that right into the total rent, which comes out to $35 for the rehab, $1,323 for the rent. And now I'm going to plug in my numbers for my property taxes, which is going to be listed right here, 113 on the Redfin site, 113, plug that right in. Homeowner insurance is 105, so I'm going to do equals 105 times 1.2. I'm adding a 20% premium because I'm assuming this 105 is an estimate for a primary residence property. And when I move it to a investment property, chances are the insurance premium is going to be higher because they view investment properties as a riskier asset. So that's why I'm multiplying by 1.2. And that's going to equals to 126. All right. I got 10% set aside of my rents every single month for maintenance, for CapEx, which means that these are my big items that need to get replaced at some point, right? Even if you have a new roof, you know you're probably going to get it replaced in 10, 15, 20 years. So you got to set aside some money for that. You know that you're going to replace your air conditioning unit at some point, right? I just got a bill a couple of weeks ago for $35 just for parts on an air conditioning unit. That matters. So just be very careful, be very mindful of these expenses, because that's money that doesn't belong to you. You don't want to be the person that underestimates your expenses and overestimates your profitability because you didn't know or you didn't anticipate making these big repairs, even though you know for a fact that you're supposed to do it. All right, then you got property manager at 10%, and they got another 5% for vacancy. So let's go ahead and plug in our details here. So for down payment in F19, I got 25%. So in my E19, I'm going to equals to my B4, which is my asking price of 135 times my down payment percentage in equals B4 times F19, my 25% down. So I'm putting 33,725. There is no arrears here. There's no assignment. So I can zero that out from the prior scenario that I did. I got 2.5% for closing costs, $35 for renovations. And now I got to figure out how much I'm financing. So my financing amount in K6 is going to equals to my down payment minus my listing price minus my down payment, listing price in the B4 minus my down payment in E19. So I'm going to be financing $101,175. I'm going to use an 8% interest rate right now for my assumptions. I'm assuming that this loan's going to start in September. I'm going to zero out this other loan here in K16 because there's no other secondary loan. That was already there from yesterday's sub to hybrid deal. Just go ahead and watch that if you're interested in that. So now that I got all these numbers in here, my total cash flow on this deal, if I were to rent it out for $1,323, will be a whopping $11. And that's a 0.3% return on your capital, assuming you bought this property for $134,900 with a $35 rehab. Assuming 25% down, 8% interest rate. Now, what would make this a deal if my target was trying to get, let's say, 10%? Again, not investment advice, right? I'm not saying 10% is the deal that you should go for. So if I lower this $100,000 in B4, watch what happens to my cash and cash return over in E9. See how I just went up to 8%? Let's go down a little bit lower. Oops, one too many zeros. And $95,000 is 9.3. So now at 92, boom, now I'm at 10.3%. So at $92,000, assuming everything else stay constant, I can rent out for $1,323. I'm now cash flowing $247 a month, and that's a 10.3% return. So it will be a deal, quote unquote, at $92,000, assuming everything else stay constant with a $35 rehab, 25% down, 8% interest rate. Now, the whole point of why we're doing this is we're trying to figure out a set of terms that might make this deal. We just figure out the price. But what if you lower your interest rate down from 8% to 7%? See how this cash and cash number just jumped up by 2 percentage points? Well, now my willingness to pay, if my criteria is still 10%, right? I have room to go up on the price because that will drive down my cash and cash return. So now if I go to 100 grand, it's still a deal at 9.9%. And it's all because the market has dropped the interest rate by 7%. So just be very wary, right? Obviously, some of your biggest moves has already happened in the interest rate market because, again, the bond market moves faster than the Federal Reserve. When the Federal Reserve lowers the interest rate, it's really their sentiment, their comments that drives the bond markets. And normally, historically, your mortgage rates spread between the 10-year yield and the mortgage rates is between 1.5 to 2%. Last year, we got up to about 3%. Very, very abnormal to get a range that high for the spreads. So that big move has already happened, along with the 10-year yield dropping almost a full point since its peaks of like high 4s, almost 5. So you already got like almost a 2% move in the market. So just be worried that you're not standing on the sidelines thinking that Federal Reserve is going to wait for more federal rate cuts when your biggest move might already happen. And now the only way you can go get another big like lower is probably from a job loss recession. So just be careful about that. All right, 254, and your cash on cash return number is now 9.9%. So all these deals still work, right? Again, you don't need to have 10% return for your capital, right? You got to decide what is the right move for you. So there are some people that will just want to cash flow break even as long as they are in a market where they're buying $1 million homes and it's going by 5% every single year. Even though it's very speculative, that's very risky because you're betting on appreciation. 5% on $1 million is 50 grand a year. I mean, that's a much bigger return than trying to get $250 of cash flow a month, right? So think about it from that way. Everybody has different strategies. Everybody has different diversification approaches. That is why you got to go talk to your own investment professional that knows your risk tolerance, that knows your appetite, that knows your strategy, and ultimately what you're trying to achieve with your investment portfolio. Now, I'm going to do one more scenario, right? Let's say you went to the home and you realize, okay, the rehab is going to triple. So now, all of a sudden, you find something behind the walls, or maybe you got the sewer scope, you realize you got to replace the whole sewer line. Those are big repairs. So now your rehab is close to 10.5K. See how much your cash and cash return dropped? It went to 8%. So the only way, if you got an inspection, and you should always have an inspection contingency, for you to keep this a deal and be objective and not take the emotions out of the deal, is to lower your asking price. So if you go back to 90 grand, well, all of a sudden it's back to a deal again. So even though your rehab tripled, you have to go back to the seller and say, hey, the only way that this is going to be a deal for me, objectively, right, not emotionally, is if I can ask for 10 grand credit so that I can make the repairs to the home, which means that I'm also paying $90,000 for the home and $10,500. That's still a 10.3% return, assuming everything else stay constant. You're renting out for $1,323 a month, but now you're cash flowing $304 a month, assuming again 25% down, 7% interest rate. All right, I hope that was helpful, everybody. If you guys want to copy the spreadsheet, go to affordablehousing.io, go to the Get Deal Analysis tool, and put in your name, email, your phone number. It's the fastest way to get a copy of the spreadsheet. I didn't make the spreadsheet from scratch. I got it from a few other folks. I tweaked it. I modified it. I learned how to analyze these deals a lot faster. And I hope you guys will be able to copy my homework, right? Look at the same deal I analyzed today. This is right on Redfin. It's been a Redfin for 7 days. And use the same spreadsheet and put it on your own YouTube channel. Because that's how you're going to build confidence that you know what you're doing. And when a partner asks you, hey, why do you think this is a deal? You can point them to your own YouTube channel at that point in time and say, I know this is a deal because I looked at deals for the past 363 days, and these were all not deals. Might that give you a little bit more confidence that you know what you're doing? I certainly hope so. All right. I hope you all have an amazing Friday. I hope you spend some quality time with your family and friends today, because that's what life is all about. All right. I'll see you all tomorrow for day 364. Have a good one.